listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN. Here is Femi Abebefe.
Welcome to another edition of the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN. I'm your host, Femi Abebefe. As always, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. Our producer, Elliot Bowman, with us on the ones and twos. As always, Michael Lombardi. We are typically a football podcast. We're going to talk football, but we have to start with what we saw yesterday afternoon in Boston. Your beloved Philadelphia 76ers lose in Game 7 in embarrassing fashion. The floor is yours, man. How are we feeling less than 24 hours removed?
Well, we feel we feel like we thought we would feel. I think this whole operation, the Ponzi scheme that started under Sam Hinkie's direction back in 2013, and there's actually people that think it worked. And there's actually people that think had Hinkie been able to stay at his job, everything would have gotten better. And I certainly don't dismiss Brian Colangelo's era as the 76er general manager as a disaster. But I think it's really important for fans, especially football fans, Washington football fans, to understand what they're getting with Josh Harris. What they're getting is a guy that believes in asset management. He believes in culture. He doesn't believe in culture. He believes in making the players comfortable. And since 13, since this whole thing has started, now he's owned the team before that, but since he's gone down this road, they built an organization based on the premise of asset management, based on we're going to acquire talent, and then we're going to kiss talent's ass to make sure that they do whatever they want to do whenever they want to do it. And they'll end up with a team that has zero mental toughness. My dislike of the team that I root for, the Philadelphia 76ers, is because everything that they do as relates to team building is nothing I believe in. For example, Femi, their star player, the guy who wanted the MVP trophy more than anything, has never been in shape. People say, Lombardi, you're not in shape either. Well, I don't play basketball. I'm an old man. I don't play basketball. Like, the guy's out of shape. Look at his body fat. What do you think it is? He can't get up and down the court. Is he a great talent? No question. Does he have physical and mental toughness? No. But I don't blame him. I don't. I blame the organization. And unless Josh Harris decides how he wants to run a team, and if he wants to be this, hey, it's all Betty Kumbaya, everybody sings along, Washington's never going to get any better. Because if you read the Hinkie's resignation letter, and if you follow Morey, who's the current general manager, they don't believe in culture. They believe in asset management. And at some point, somebody who's going to have enough sense in the room is going to stand there and say, look, all this asset management talk that we're discussing, that's important, but it's just one slice of the pie. And I think what they built is a team that has no toughness. Zero. And the only tough player that they ever acquired, they traded him away because one of the softest players on their team didn't want him, Ben Simmons. So, that's just who they are. And I think, to me, yesterday was reaffirmation of everything that I believed. I believed it in Embiid. I've never been in the Embiid fan club. I've never. I have never been in there. Not because I don't respect his talent. I do. I just don't respect him as a competitor. I don't respect him as a guy who's willing to do what it takes to be the greatest player that he can. This nonsense that he's the greatest center in basketball is a complete joke.
Oh, it's silly.
He hasn't gotten past round 2 of the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, in comparison to his contemporaries in the MVP race, it's not even close. I mean, you see Nikola Jokic carrying the Denver Nuggets 35-point triple-double in the series against Phoenix, and they're now favored to win the Western Conference. And then, Giannis Antetokounmpo, they obviously failed this year, getting bounced out in the first round, but he's won a title with Milwaukee and has made other playoff runs with that team there. It's not even close. And it's funny because I was looking at my Twitter timeline yesterday as this is going down. I saw your tweets, by the way. You were electric. I tweeted that out yesterday. Just go back. If you didn't see it, go to M Lombardi NFL and read Michael Lombardi's timeline from yesterday. Just the series of tweets as the fourth quarter is going underway. It is something that you would not want to miss. But while reading the timeline, I saw a lot of people echoing the thoughts that you've had, not just this season, dating back to as long as I've known you, talking about this Sixers team and talking about Joel Embiid. People talking about how he prioritized MVP over winning the title, and how this has kind of been just a mentally weak kind of organization here. And I felt like I was listening to you, seeing people's timelines, that everyone's kind of catching up and figuring out what's actually been going on in Philadelphia.
I mean, I've been saying this since he's been there. There's a broadcaster here, Danny, somebody, Pomeroy or something, that when I called him out of shape, they laughed at me. Like, the guy has never been in shape. The guy has done nothing to try to become a better player. Nothing. He refuses to get in shape. He's lazy. He doesn't want to work hard. And I don't know what's more obvious is the fact that when he's met with a challenge, he walks away. I mean, he literally is the kid who, if there's a bully in the neighborhood, he's going to walk 8 blocks in the other direction if not face the bully. The guy has zero toughness. It's all false bravado. It's all media hype. It's all, he's a media darling. Now, here's what's going to happen, because he's under criticism.
Yeah, for the first time.
He's finally under criticism. Yeah. Now this is the second time. Against Toronto, when he almost didn't play in that series. He was hurt, and then he came and he finally played in Game 7, and he cried in the locker room. You know what I would have done if I'd have been the head coach of the 76ers? I'd have put that picture of him crying in front of his locker every day. If it means this much that you're going to cry, why don't you work harder? See, I think he knows he doesn't put the time or effort in. And so I think when the challenge comes to him, he backs down. I mean, there's Al Horford, who we traded a draft pick to get him off the roster, kicking his ass. 37-year-old Al Horford, right? Because Al Horford knows he's tougher than he is. Al Horford told everybody in the Celtic locker room, these guys are a bunch of pussies. We'll just kick their ass. Once it matches. I mean, there is qualities, and this is what concerns you if you're a Washington football fan. There are qualities that organizations must possess, that the owner has to give them. It's one of the reasons you as a Cowboy fan may never win a Super Bowl, because Jerry refuses to give the coach the qualities you need. He refuses to allow the coach to be demanding. He refuses to allow the coach to push it to a level, to make changes to the roster that needs to happen. See, there's the disconnect. I'm not saying the coach should be in complete control, but when you want to kiss the players' asses, this is what you're going to get. If you want to make them entitled, this is what you want to get. You're going to have to push the envelope, or you're going to have to find a player like Jalen Hurts or Tom Brady or somebody who is such a competitor that he's going to drive the force of the organization. It's funny. There was a guy, we tried to get him on the show the other day, and he writes for the Daily Philadelphia Voice or something, and he wrote about the Sixers they have zero leadership on their team. This guy stands in front of the media. He talks about, we need, James and I can't win by ourselves. I got to do better. James got to. It's all bullshit. It's all bullshit. You refuse to get in shape. I mean, you refuse to get in shape. You can't even play. The second quarter, I had 3 texts from people in the NBA saying, your boy's gassed. Of course he was. If anybody would read an NBA game plan against Philadelphia, it would be run the court, run the court, run the court. Make him work, because he's out of shape. Everybody in the league knows it. Nobody in the media wants to talk about it. Let's make him the MVP. I loved your boy Kendrick Perkins. He's out there, ripping Embiid. Meanwhile, he was the instrument driving him to get the MVP.
Yep.
Like, why did it take this game for people to fucking wake up? Like, why did it take this game? Like, I've been saying it for 8 years. Like, all of a sudden, it takes this game? Like, I've seen this storm coming. Like, I'm not sitting there, saying that, I've been calling it a Ponzi scheme forever. How about, you go through, look, you can go through all the drafts, all the mistakes they made. It's a joke, because when you build your organization, when you build your team based on asset management and not based on culture of mental and physical toughness, you're never going to win. You're never going to win.
You mentioned the press conference yesterday, and I thought it was a disaster. I mean, I tweeted, there was a clip that came out with, he said that, like someone said, it's not a failure, it's a step to success, kind of paraphrasing what Giannis said after they got beat by the Miami Heat. I'm like, dude, you guys haven't won shit. Like, what are you talking about that this is a step to success? Like, you guys continue to hit your heads on the second round ceiling here, and there's no sign of it ever getting better. And he kind of had like a little smirk on his face when he said it too, where I'm just like, oh my God, man! Like this is really, really bad. And the lack of leadership that you talk about, I think, is really like the biggest point here with the Philadelphia 76ers. I remember back in the Game 4 last Sunday, and the game that they won. And it was PJ Tucker at the end of that fourth quarter who was like having to give Embiid a pep talk because it looked like Embiid wanted to tap out. When Boston made that rally in the fourth quarter to get back into that game, Embiid was he was like, holy, I mean, I don't know if we can do it. And it took PJ Tucker and James Harden having that game that he had in that day to be like, hey, big fella, like get your ass in line. Like we got to go ahead and win this game because our season is pretty much on the line today. Like there's been a number of times where Embiid is looking to kind of tap out and just be like, all right, it looks like we're done here and we're not going to win. That's not the MVP. And it is funny that Kendrick Perkins was ripping him because he doesn't win the MVP without Perkins going on that rant after the trade deadline.
Perkins
and Nikola Jokic.
Force. Yeah, he's the driver. He can't see it. He only can see it when it's obvious. And everybody fired Doc. You could fire Doc. Doc's one of the worst of all time. But Doc does nothing to prepare his team for the playoffs. He does nothing to prepare himself for that. His substitutions going back to when they lost to Atlanta, there's nothing there. I mean, there's nothing there. It's just this, Doc is just an ex-player that really, he's got this, he's won favor with the media because he's a good quote. But at the end of the day, they have no leadership. They have nobody who's going to demand excellence. Eric Spoelstra had this great quote the other day about, we needed to go through the hard times. We needed to feel how did he say it? We needed to, we had to, the beauty of the struggle is what he called it. The Sixers that organization is against any struggle. They want to paint a Hollywood movie. That's what they want. They want it to be everything's going to be nice. We're all going to sit in the playground and Joel's the MVP. It's comical. And if you understand how to build a champion, if you truly do, then Morey does it. He's all asset management. Mm-hmm. He can carry the electoral college because he's got the media behind him. But if you understand that, you would have seen 5 years ago that this guy has no chance to ever win a title currently. Now, if he got traded to a team to Miami with Butler and Butler made him do it and he's a second dog,
he doesn't want Miami. He would not want to be in that heat culture because Pat Riley would call his ass out in front of the media too. And I don't think Embiid wants that kind of. He wants the situation to be where Morey's defending him and he's going after anybody who says anything bad about Joel Embiid because that's kind of what it's been throughout his time in Philadelphia. Not a great time for your Sixers. I'm sorry they got eliminated yesterday. Commanders fans, you got Josh Harris. Look out. Hopefully your organization can get it together. We're going to get to the football on the other side. We're going to take a quick break first, though.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN. Here is Femi Abebefe.
All right, we've scrubbed the Sixers from our system here. They've been removed from the NBA playoffs.
I mean, we really haven't because what I failed to mention, Bill Parcells has a great quote. He says, if you don't teach them how to bite when they're puppies, you'll never teach them how to bite later. And that sums up Embiid perfectly. See, you kissed his ass when he got there. Oh, don't play, don't practice, just rest your foot. Simmons, don't play, just rest your foot. Everything's fine. Don't compete. Take time off. Take time off. Because that's our culture. Our culture is we want to asset manage. We want to lose to get more. We want to teach toughness. And I think it's proven out. So that's true.
No, I think that's the perfect point that you bring up there as we kind of transition into the NFL, because people always talk about tanking and all that stuff. And then the tanking I think is different from, okay, it's late December, we're a bad team, let's just go ahead and try to secure a top pick versus let's enter the season like the Sixers are doing. Let's enter the season with the intent to lose games. And that's what they did in Philadelphia. And it breeds a loser mentality and a loser organization. That's why tanking, in theory, sounds like it's the right thing to do. But in actual practice and application, it creates this situation that they have currently right now where there's no winning attitude.
Because the people that are telling you to tank have never stood in front of a team. The people that are telling you to lose have never stood in front of your team and tried to create a culture of winning, competition, mental toughness, it's funny. Did Jordan go to a press conference and complain that B.J. Armstrong and Steve Kerr weren't good enough and that's why they lost?
Nope.
I mean, come on. Now, seriously, the guy has no competitive fiber in his body. And he wanted the MVP and he proved it that you can politicize yourself to get it. Did he care about winning? He cared about winning? No, because if they're the third seed, if he cared about winning, he would have dominated.
we're going to get to NFL win totals here real quick, but I want to make this last point about this Embiid Sixers thing. You know the bullshit comment that I saw people were talking about on Twitter? Like, you know, because like there was the clip about him saying that, hey, James and I, we can't do it by ourselves, whatever. And then people were trying to defend that, saying, well, look at the bigger context of the quote. And I read the bigger context quote where he was kind of building up to it. It's still a joke. Like it's still a joke. I was like, I'm like, this doesn't make it better. The people that defend him on Twitter, the people that defend him on Twitter are comical. I mean, I had a guy telling me he's the greatest center of all time. Fucking greatest center. He couldn't get past the second round. I mean, guy can't compete. You know, go back and watch the Toronto game that they lost in 19. You know, he played. He wasn't healthy. You know, I mean, it's the same shit. He has zero mental toughness. They created it. That's why if you're a Washington fan and your win total, wherever it is, once Josh gets his hands in this team and he starts to say, oh, we're asset management, and we're not going to teach toughness, good luck. We're going to manage Sam Howell and see if we can do this thing with our QB there. Yeah, no, I was like, this does not make it better, the full quote. And one thing that the great ones always do, in times of toughness, in times of adversity, they shoulder all the blame. In times of success, they deflect it and they talk about the collective. Embiid's talking about the collective when they're losing, saying that we all have to get better. Nobody gives a shit about we. Like, you are the face of the franchise. You're the guy that's supposed to be carrying this thing. Like, I thought it was all ridiculous there. But let's get on with it. I'm not even a Sixers fan, but I'm invested in this nonsense. Let's move on here and get to the win totals in the NFL, Michael, because I think the important thing to point out as we talk about the schedule, and over the last handful of days, you've heard people talk about strength of schedule. Which team has a tough schedule? Which team has an easy schedule? Well, it depends on how you measure it, because I think a lot of people, the misconception that they do is that they measure it based off of last year's win percentage, when we know that no league turns over in terms of a parity standpoint more than the NFL. So that can't be the most accurate way to do it. And when you look at it from a win percentage off of last year, you're going to see all the NFC East teams at the top. And that's because they all had really good records a season ago. And they all play each other twice a year this season. Now, when you use win totals, it differs. And I think that's where you see kind of the discrepancy based on judging it on this season's win totals versus last season's win percentage.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think, to me, the strength of schedule crap is bullshit, because, you're saying that, you're saying a team that won last year is a playoff team. I mean, I don't view Minnesota as a legitimate playoff team. I don't view the Giants as a legitimate playoff team. So, and then you're saying the teams are staying the same, which we all know they're not. Green Bay's not the same team because they're going to change quarterbacks. So I think I think the way you put it out there, and if you look at win totals as it relates, like Philadelphia, they have one of the hardest schedules in the league. But then when you look at their win total against who their win totals are against, they're 24th in the league.
Yep.
To me, that's more relevant.
Yeah, no, that's 100% more relevant, because it's actually projecting the team that they're going to have in 2023. It's not looking back at the team they had in 2022. So the Eagles, 24th. So the average opponent has an 8.5 win total, which is dead on average with the rest of the league there. Dallas tied for 17th, as well as the New York Giants tied for 17th. Now, a team that still has a tough schedule when you judge the win totals and the win percentage is the New England Patriots. They're tied for first, them and the Miami Dolphins. So those AFC East teams on paper, which I think makes sense in a lot of our heads, is that, hey, the AFC teams are going to have the toughest schedules because those are where the best quarterbacks in the league are. So New England, Miami, Buffalo, Kansas City, they're still at the top of the board when you talk about the quote-unquote strength of schedule, because every game in the AFC appears as it's going to be a gauntlet.
Yeah, it's going to be hard. I mean, every AFC team, in the East is good. Assuming if Mac Jones gets to the level that he played as a rookie, that's acceptable, right? I'm not saying it's going to be the same level as Aaron Rodgers when he's the MVP, but it's acceptable. And it takes three teams. But the NFC, to me, that's where I think you're going to see, if you're going to bet a win total in this thing, if you want to put your money out there, I'm looking more towards the NFC. Because I think that there is such a discrepancy between the good teams and the average teams. Like Washington, for example. To me, if Sam Howell's a good player, okay, they could really jump up their win total.
Yeah, they'll fly over.
Now you're counting on, is Rivera good enough? Or Carolina? They're not a bad team. Last year they were good enough that if J.C. Horn stays healthy at the end of the year, their offensive line is better. I could see them jumping up. because of the NFC, because of that. I think, to me, that has a hell of a lot more to do with it than anything. And, look, San Francisco's, their win total dropped from 11.5 to 10.5, and yet they play, based on win percentage, they play a 28% schedule. I think that over is in place. The Bears, the Bears win total, how are the Bears getting to 8 wins? How is that even possible?
My guy's going to level up.
Oh,
that's how that's possible.
I'm telling you, I'm surprised that you turned down Embiid as a client. I really am. I'm surprised you did.
Because I've seen his movies. I mean, we've seen his movies in the NBA, and I'm a Jokic guy too. Like that's my guy. So I was never taking Embiid on as a client.
Well, I'll give you a perfect example. The Saints, right? Mm-hmm. They have the 31st easiest schedule based on win totals. They're a good team. They play Tampa, who's no good, twice. They play Atlanta, who's not very good without a quarterback. They play Carolina with a rookie quarterback. I mean, if you're going to bet somebody, New Orleans is really an attractive team to bet. They're good on defense. They've got a lot of weapons offensively. If Carr comes in and doesn't turn the ball over and he plays with a little bit of toughness with Kamara in the backfield, I mean, they got it with William. I mean, they got a good team, a good offensive line. I'm shocked people aren't betting their win total more.
Well, I think it's because the schedule is baked in and their win total set at 9.5. And I think the Saints 9-8 feels like kind of their range this season. They feel like a pretty stable team at 9-8. I'm not sure. I'm not really ready to go to war with Derek Carr and Dennis Allen as the QB head coach combination that's going to win double-digit games. That's just not something that I would be interested in putting my money on. But you did mention some interesting teams, though. I know a team that we agree upon. We talked about this in the Lombardi line last week over on VSiN. The Jacksonville Jaguars. I think there's an assumption being made that they're just going to be this elite caliber team because they made the playoffs last year and they have a young quarterback. They have to take the next step there. There's a difference in taking the next step from 7 wins to 10 wins versus going from 10 wins to 11, 12, 13 wins. Like, I'm a little skeptical on the Jaguars' optimism that we're hearing all throughout this offseason.
Well, I think a lot of it, too, Femi, is people don't understand what happens in the offseason. I think we just assume that people are going to build off of it. Baker Mayfield has this great season, and next year they open up in Kansas City after they almost beat Kansas City, right?
Yep.
And then that next season it's not the same because what the missing element of this is people spend more time studying you. When you win and you become a problem for teams, your opponents spend more time studying you. They spend more off-season time. They try to look out how to break you down. It's like any other business. If your competitors are doing well and they're kicking your butt, you're going to spend more time studying your competitors. You're going to figure out what can we do to gain an advantage, right? How do we shift this? What do we have to do? And I think ultimately that's the off-season. That's the month of May. That's June. Then you take that information and you put it into our planning for the off-season. This whole notion that, I love when head coaches come in for an interview and they bring this notebook in and they say, well, here, I've got every practice lined up from now until, the first day of the regular season. Why? Like, why? Like, why can't we just do it? I get the outline. That's great. You're organized. But we don't know what's coming up. Mm-hmm. Like, that schedule, do we have time to practice against Philly? Are we spending time on this? Are we spending time on that? Are we spending time on handling Tyreek Hill and the RPO offense in Miami? What are we doing? Like, to me, that's what a head coach has to do. That's why one of the things I hate about Doc, everything. One thing about sports, it always kind of just because it's a different sport doesn't mean it doesn't translate. There's nothing he did to get his team ready for the playoffs. He didn't play a guy. I mean, he played Shake Milton all the as the backup. Playoff time, he's not playing. Like, why would you waste minutes on him if you're not using him? Mm-hmm. Like, people don't understand. When you're a head coach, time and equals money. It's a time management job.
I want to get your thoughts on some more of these win totals. I know one that I like as we kind of go bounce back and forth here. The Detroit Lions under. And maybe I'm just getting into the fading the popular trendy teams because Jacksonville's a trendy team. Detroit, they're going to be on opening night against Kansas City. Clearly, the league is buying into the hype. A lot of people are excited about the Hard Knock Lions. under 9.5, because over at DraftKings, I think you can get it at plus money. I think other shops you can get it at plus money as well. That's one that really intrigues me there. Like Detroit, I think they'll be a good team, but expecting 10, 11 wins, I'm not sure that should be the expectation going into the season, especially with what they have done up front on defense. Outside of Aiden Hutchinson, there's nobody in that front seven that's really scaring any team. So Detroit's one that I've kind of identified as a team that maybe falls short of meeting those high expectations heading into the season. Let's talk more about some win totals. I want to ask you about the Cleveland Browns because they made a big acquisition at the pass rush department here earlier this week. We'll discuss it here on the GM Shuffle.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN. Here is Femi Abebefe.
Player acquisition is a 365-day-a-year job, is what Stephen Jones of the Dallas Cowboys says. And we saw the Cleveland Browns, despite the draft being over, free agency's over, they're still at it. Andrew Berry, that general manager of the Cleveland Browns, in his front office, went ahead and acquired Za'Darius Smith, the Vikings pass rusher, who this offseason, it sounded like he was a little disgruntled in Minnesota, now has gone over to Cleveland, where their win total is sitting at 9.5. What do you make of this Browns team now in year 2 of Deshaun Watson being the quarterback?
Well, 50% of the Minnesota Vikings defensive line is now in Cleveland, which was the strength of Minnesota's defense, if they had any strength at all on defense, right? Dalvin Tomlinson and now Za'Darius Smith, who gives them another guy to rush out other side of Myles Garrett. You know, they had, when Clowney was actually played better at times, he was doing better. But to me, I like Cleveland. I can't imagine, and I could be completely wrong on this, I can't imagine Deshaun Watson could play any worse than he played last year. Like, there's just no way.
He was awful.
Right? I mean, there's just no way. You know, I do think they'll miss Kareem Hunt as a power back. To me, I always thought he's still a free agent, believe it or not, out there. Nobody's making a move on him, and he thought he was going to get big money. So I have a hard time thinking Watson's going to be worse. And they can run the ball. They should be able to play with physicality. And I think with Schwartz running the defense, I think the defense will be much better.
I think if Watson takes that step that you're expecting, this can be a really, really dangerous team in an already difficult division there. I think all those teams should be respected. Cincinnati, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, of course. Mike Tomlin's never gone below 500 in his career as the head coach of the Steelers. But when you add Cleveland to that mix and the collection of talent that they have, that's going to be a very, very tough division there. And if Watson continues to kind of get better and get his legs back underneath him, because it felt like he looked like a quarterback who hadn't played in 700 days last year, which was the truth.
I mean, it's 58% completion, Femi. I mean, he couldn't make a throw.
Yeah, it was terrible.
You know, and it was ugly. I mean, it was really bad. So you got to think that he's going to get better. I mean, at some point, you know, he's going to get back to the norm. I mean, when they went from Brissett, who wasn't playing great, to Watson, they really killed themselves. I mean, they lowered the average per. Everything went way down. And I think Stefanski's got to get better, too. I think Schwartz will help Stefanski become a better head coach.
On the flip side of that coin, what do you make of the team building from the Minnesota Vikings? Because I think this is an interesting team because Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, in his second year as the general manager, based on the moves that he's made, it doesn't feel like he's bought into we were a 13-win team last year. It feels like they're kind of resetting the deck in a ways. We know that the rumors of the Dalvin Cook stuff, that they're looking to trade him if anybody would even call. Maybe they end up releasing Dalvin Cook. They trade Za'Darius Smith. They let Dalvin Tomlinson go. They cut Adam Thielen. They let him walk. It doesn't feel like the Vikings are kind of buying into the 13-win season they had a year ago, and their win total at 8.5 suggests that they're probably going to be a big team that regresses. But what do you make of how they've gone about this offseason here and kind of reshuffling the deck after winning the division last year?
A lot of this is the cause and effect of Kirk Cousins. I mean, this is from Cousins' contract. I think they have to try to get their cap in order. They're trying to get their cap in some kind of order, and that's what I think his biggest attempt is doing. He's letting older guys go. Tomlinson both over 30, Smith over 30, Thielen over 30. He's letting these older guys go that probably are at the end of their rope, that still have some things left, but they don't match the salary. So he's trying to reboot the team on the fly and manage the cap. And he's taken some severe cap hits to do it, but I don't think he has any other choice. You know, will they be better on defense? Geez, I mean, they have to be, but, you know, it's going to be a really challenging defense. Brian Flores is going to have his work cut out for him, but they'll be tough. I mean, you know, they'll be multiple. But will they have anybody who can really get stops when you need it? I'm not sure about that. Everything that they do is evolved around their offense. I mean, they have to get rid of Cook. They need the cap room. So eventually they're just going to let Cook walk out the building. They added Addison as a receiver to help out with Jefferson. They've got to sign him to an extension. They picked up his 5th year. Both the offensive and defensive lines haven't been great, but when they've gone down this Cousins road, who isn't mentally tough and doesn't play big in big games, and they've really had nothing to show for it. I think it's time they need to kind of spin this around, and they need to find their other quarterback. I know Cousins says, I want to stay, I want to be there. I mean, yeah, if you really want to be here, take less money.
I'm still thinking of the Cousins throwing short of the sticks on 4th down against the Giants in the playoffs. Probably the most inexplicable play of the entire playoffs. It's like, buddy, your season's on the line. What are we doing here? But I kind of like the way that they've gone about this offseason. Like I said, they're not really buying into, oh my God, we were so close. We're a 13-win team. We're right there. Let's go ahead and double down on this. They're saying, no, let's take a step back. Let's get rid of these older contracts and let's reset the deck here. And I would imagine, they were linked to a lot of quarterbacks in the draft as maybe a potential destination for Hendon Hooker or whoever. And maybe next year is the year that they kind of go after it and actually get that quarterback of the future as they try to remove Cousins from the equation here, because it's a team that I think we talk about hitting their head on the ceiling with the Sixers. I think the Vikings with Kirk Cousins at quarterback have hit their head on the ceiling. They've got about as much as you can get out of this whole deal here.
Yeah, I think so. Same thing with the Warriors. To me, there's a lot of franchises, because of the salary cap, because of pushing the chips into the middle of the table, are at a crossroads. The Warriors, what are they going to do? Philadelphia. You want to pay Harden? He could opt out. You want to pay him $40 million a year? You want to get him a $210 million contract based on what you saw? But if you don't, where are you going? How are you getting out of this mess? How are you getting out of this mess? You traded a bunch of first-round draft picks, all protected, but you traded a bunch of them. Some are loosely protected. Minnesota's in a cleanup mode. I see Minnesota in a cleanup mode, trying to bridge themselves to the next level, and they're trying to do it with youth, which is the only thing he can do. It's not as severe as the Rams, but it's along those lines.
I'm glad you brought up the Rams, because that was a team that I had circled as a potential win total under bet. Right now, their win total sitting at 7.5. And I think this team, it can go one of two ways. Maybe they find the fountain of youth with Matthew Stafford. He's able to stay healthy, and they're a competitive team in that NFC West. But I think the more likely scenario is that Stafford might be a shot fighter, and this thing kind of gets off the rails there, and they end up bottoming out and in the whole asset management business, maybe try to acquire some picks and go from there and start the rebuild fully. With maybe a new front office, and who knows how long Sean McVay even has. He's already flirted about going to TV and retiring.
Yeah, but there's no TV. There's no more TV. I don't know where. Brady's going to Fox.
So someone will make room
Olsen's
for McVay.
What do they do with Olsen? So are there going to be any TV jobs? Maybe Amazon decides to step up. But to me, I was surprised he came back. I didn't think that. To me, this is going to be a hard rebuild. I really do. I think it's going to be a hard rebuild, because here's what my question to you is, Femi. Let's say they start the season against the Seattle. They got San Francisco. They got to go back to Cincinnati, right? Yep. They have the Colts. They got Philadelphia. They got Pittsburgh. They got the Cowboys. It's not an easy schedule for them. The teams, and if they don't stay healthy, it becomes even more problematic. But let's say they start out slow and they're 1-5, and you're Aaron Donald. Do you want to play on a 1-5 team at this point in your career?
I don't think. He flirted with retiring too.
Yeah, but I think this is past retirement. I think this is like, do you want to go out like this? Is this how you want to go? To me, he's one of their assets. Same thing with Cooper Kupp. Now, McVay said, hey, these guys are determined. Everybody's not taking it. Everybody thinks we can't do it. Well, to me, I look at your depth chart. It's not that I don't think you could do it. I think your depth chart looks horrible.
Okay. Well, I got to ask you the follow-up, because you just said Aaron Donald is one of their assets. And now people are going to start raising their eyebrows and be like, oh my goodness, is the best defensive player of his generation potentially available? And something you've always said, everyone's available. Just depends on the price here. Are you envisioning a scenario to where maybe there's a midseason trade that Donald goes to a contender looking to kind of get over the hump there?
I'm envisioning that if the Rams don't play well, if they don't play well and they don't start well, I think it could happen. Just like I'm going to tell you, it's May the 15th.
Yeah.
I'm telling you by July, Embiid will want to be traded. I'm just telling you, like the part of Al Davis used to say this all the time. The secret to any great organization is to anticipate the problem, not react.
Yep.
The Rams, if I'm in the Rams and I'm Les Snead, I got to anticipate that Aaron may not be fully vested if some of these young players that we have don't come through. And don't kid ourselves in thinking that, if we stay healthy, we're going to be fine. If we stay healthy is a hard thing to live on.
It's a bad plan.
It's a hard thing to live on. It's hard to do. So I'm envisioning that if they don't start fast or they're competitive, like at some point, this is a business. Like, okay, by the time we get good, you're going to be too old. Mm-hmm. I mean, did you think that they would ever trade Jalen Ramsey?
I mean, I could see that
for a third-round pick.
No, not for a third-round pick. No.
I mean, they traded Allen Robinson and paid $10 million. This is how bad they are on the cap. Like, they're in deep shit. And I think Sean's a great coach, but at the end of the day, are they going to get out of this in 1 year? No chance.
So why do you think that win total is at 7.5? Because
because of Sean. Because win totals are predicated on quarterbacks and coaches. Because I think if people think Stafford stays healthy, they'll win at least 8 games.
Yeah.
You can't name anybody in their secondary.
No.
I mean, you can't name anybody. I mean, Raheem Morris has got a tough job ahead of him. I mean, how's he getting pressure once we double? If we double this guy, how's he getting pressure? Then if we get any injuries, and don't tell me you're not going to get injuries. If we get any injuries, we're screwed.
Yeah, everyone's getting injuries in the NFL. Like, you're not going to – if the plan going into the season is if we stay healthy, like that's a horrible plan.
That's the worst plan of all.
Yeah, that's the
worst plan of all.
Yeah.
As an executive, you have to assume you're going to get injured, and it can't bother you.
Yeah,
it cannot bother you. You just got to move on. You just got to say, okay, we got next guy. If we lose the left tackle, you have to have a solution for how because there's about 5 positions that are hard to overcome: quarterback, left tackle, rusher. Those are hard things to kind of manipulate your way through, and they catch up to you. But you got to have an answer for them.
And I think the thing for the Rams is that their guy that they're saying, if we stay healthy, is the quarterback, the most important position on the field. So,
but even if he's healthy, is he good enough?
It's a much worse team than it was a couple years ago when he first got there. That's for sure. And that team was really good, and he was good on that team, leading them to a Super Bowl. I want to ask you about a former client of mine, Kyler Murray, on the other side. I mean, the Arizona Cardinals win total, the lowest this season. Jonathan Gannon has talked about the rehab process for Kyler Murray. We'll get to that, as well as clean up some other news and notes around the National Football League. This is the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN. Here is Femi Abebefe.
According to the betting market, the worst team in the NFL this season is going to be the Arizona Cardinals. They have the lowest win total on the board, set at 4.5. They are favored in all of 0 games so far this season at our friends at DraftKings, who have handicapped all 272 games. Great job by them, by the way, going ahead and doing that 30 minutes after the schedule was released. But the Cardinals are in an interesting spot this season because they have a lot of draft capital after making the trade with the Houston Texans, multiple first-round picks, multiple mid-round picks, and head coach Jonathan Gannon had this to say about their quarterback, Kyler Murray, who, of course, is rehabbing the torn ACL, which he suffered in December. He said, quote, "Kyler is a long way away, but we don't play for a long time," indicating that Kyler has a lot of time to heal up and get out and ready for the season. Given the fact, though, Michael, that he tore his ACL in December, when would you anticipate Kyler Murray returning? Because as a movement quarterback, as a guy who likes to move around, I feel like you wouldn't want him being back on the field until that knee was 100% healthy.
Well, I think if he starts the year off on PUP, right, which is what it will do, physically unable to perform, then they've got to make a decision come the first the roster cutdown date to decide whether they want to keep him on PUP, which then I think puts him at another 6 weeks, or if they want to carry him because he could come back before 6 weeks. My sense of it is it would be at least 6 weeks into the season before he could come back. I mean, right now they're carrying 5 quarterbacks on their team. 5. They've got David Blau, Jeff Driscoll, Clayton Tune, who they drafted in the 5th round, and then Colt McCoy. Now, we're talking about Kyler Murray's health, but Colt McCoy can't stay healthy either. Yeah. That's a problem. So, they've got a lot of issues. To me, if I were Monty Ossendorf, I would tear it down. I mean, I would trade Hopkins. I would try to just reestablish the culture. Because here's what's going to happen. You talk about looking into the future. What happens if you have the worst record in football and Caleb Williams is available for you? Are you going to pass on Caleb Williams for Kyler Murray?
Well, that's the question that's going to be looming over that organization. I mean, Caleb Williams looks terrific. He looks terrific. Now, let's see how he plays this season. But, I mean, he won the Heisman Trophy last year, so he's off to a pretty damn good start and is the presumable number 1 overall pick according to the betting markets right now.
If they were both in a draft, Murray and Williams would be the higher pick.
Yeah, he's a bigger guy. Yeah.
He could see, he could throw. I mean, he's not, to me, this is – there's a lot of things you got to change about the Cardinals. And it starts with their culture. It starts with them, again, doing the Josh Harris thing that he did with Embiid. When you kiss your best player, when you kiss this quarterback's ass like you did, and you make him the face of the franchise, and he doesn't garner the respect of the other people by his work habits, his preparation, and all those things, that it hurts your culture. It's the same thing. We're in this podcast the same way we started. Everything that's wrong with Philly. Philly is a great organization to study if you're an executive or you're some sports business management, to study this, remove all the bullshit from the media and study what it means, what it takes to build a championship level team. You need assets. Yes, you need draft picks, but you got to hit on those draft picks, right? Mm-hmm. It's the same thing with the Cardinals. How are we going to rebuild this franchise? We're giving this guy who's the face of our franchise all this money. And yet, we all had to put a clause in his contract to get him to work hard. Oh, but we took it out. So we really didn't mean that. Buda Baker, our best player, is sitting there on the field, and he stands and he stays on the sideline. Like, he doesn't endear himself. Is he not a good teammate? I mean, those are the things that you have to get. Because I'm going to tell you this. This is not a secret. There's no championship team ever, that has culture like this. There's none. There is none. You could talk talent all you want. Mm-hmm. You could talk they got a talented team. We've seen it. The Eagles, the one year with all the talent they had, they couldn't come together.
The dream team.
Talent doesn't, it comes together. It has to be put together. If I'm Monty, I'm going to rebuild this team in the right way and try to trade as many of those older assets I can to play young players.
Why do you think that happens where organizations get into this mentality of we have to kiss the star's ass? Like, to me, it almost seems like that's like a low self-esteem kind of move from an organization. Like, have some damn pride, Like we talked about it last week on the Lombardi line during one of the breaks here. But the Miami Heat, when they had LeBron James, and LeBron's one of my favorite athletes of all time. I love LeBron James, one of the greatest basketball players ever. But if the Miami Heat and Pat Riley would say, "Hey, we're not going to kiss your ass, LeBron James," like, what are these other organizations doing with these guys who are not even near that level of player where it's like, oh my God, well, we have you and you're so talented and how will we ever replace you? What sparks that from an organization?
Well, because we can't find talent. So when we get a talented player, we have to make sure we keep our talented player. They don't understand that talent alone will never win. That talent has to work hard. Talent has to be the best player on the team. Talent has to work the hardest. Giannis works hard. That now you can get somewhere. They miss that. There's a disconnect. Oh, we just need to get talent. Jerry's problem is I run the team, so I pick the players. The players work for me. The coach doesn't have enough, so the coach can't demand from them because Jerry's got him in their corner. I mean, I lived through it with Al Davis. It's impossible. Mm-hmm. It's impossible. The coach can't stand in front of the team and demand. Look, if you're a coach, you got to have confrontation. The job of a coach is to push players to their limits, to make practice harder than the games, to challenge players, to do all the things they have to do. I mean, Harden was the week between the Nets series and the Celtics series, I think Harden was in Las Vegas. He was in Atlantic City. I mean, he was like all over the map, winning. I mean, I already won multi-million dollars, and so, like, where's the pushing of it? Like, you got to be a coach has to be a driving force. If you want the players to like you, then you shouldn't be a coach. You want the players to respect you. Now, the only way you can do that is through your knowledge, through pushing them, demanding from them. I'm going to make you a better player. That's the mantra. That's the coach's credo. I'm going to make you a better player. I'm going to work you so that you're a better player. I mean, the great story about Josh Richardson, when he was just kind of hanging out, he wanted to go to the G League. And Spoelstra is like, no, we're not sending you to the G League. We want you in the gym. So Spoelstra walks in the gym one day and he sees him in there and he says, are you working on your shot? He said, okay, I want you to pick 7 spots behind the 3-point line, and I want you to make 73s. So he goes out there, takes it. I think the first time he makes 54 threes. Spoelstra says, okay, you're running. Run. Sprints. Right? The guy looks at him like he's crazy. Sprint. Next time. Come back again. Next, repeat the pen. I think he gets to 60. Then he gets to 62. But every time in between he doesn't hit it, he's sprinting. Like he's pushing him. He's pushing him. He's pushing him. And then eventually he gets there. And then all of a sudden the kid realizes, oh, this is how you have to work to be great. This is how I have to work. And that's where teams miss it. We get so caught up. And trust me, in my career, I didn't start off this. I was a talent whore. Oh, that guy's so good. We could coach him. We used to make chemistry. Oh, who cares? That's for labs. No, it matters. Once you've been in the league enough, it matters. And for people that have never been in a locker room, that they see it as something that it's not. You got to stand in front of that player. You got to demand from them. And then they make excuses. Like everybody makes excuses for Embiid. Nobody holds him accountable. So why shouldn't he make excuses for himself? It's the same thing with Kyler Murray.
No, I think that's a really good lesson in terms of team building because that's what we overlook. And what do you talk about the Marcus Aurelius quote or whatever, the secret to victory lies in the organization of the non-obvious. Like that's the non-obvious right there. It's like, hey, like the actual building of chemistry and accountability and being able to, whether you're the best player or the worst player, we can demand the same expectations from all of you guys, and that's how you're going to build something that's sustainable.
Right. So when it gets hard, when it got hard, they folded like a cheap tent, Philadelphia. Yeah. Like a fucking cheap tent in the second quarter. They had a 10-point lead. It's going good. If we're shooting a nice Hollywood movie, we'll play. But once it gets hard, we don't want nothing to do with hard. We don't want nothing to do with hard. You sit there and you watch them and you see there's no alignment because the leader, the guy that they think about this, Femi. They won 3 games against Boston. One of them, they didn't even have the MVP on the court.
Yeah.
He was responsible for 2 wins. Was he? Well, he was hurt. He has a bad knee. He's always fucking hurt. Why? Because he's always on the ground and he's always out of shape. Don't tell me this is the best he's going to look back on his career and say, I just never gave it all. It's funny because Darryl Dawkins, when he first got here, this is years ago, many people forget, Darryl was this unbelievably physical specimen. He's, and everybody complained about how soft he was. He would never go to the rim and be physical. Nobody complains about Embiid. He's got fucking Marcus Smart guarding him. Just think about that logic. They put terrible. Marcus Smart on him. And if you would have said, well, Marcus Smart can't guard him, Marcus Smart probably said, no, I'm tougher than him. I'll just keep battling him. I'll wear him down. I'll make him work hard. It isn't that he scored a point against Marcus Smart. People miss that. Marcus Smart makes him work hard. So once he works hard, he's tired. Yeah. And once he's tired, we own him.
Yeah. It's the fact that that's even allowed, to let I think back to the centers from the past. I'm like, Shaq would put Marcus Smart in a freaking locker. He would stuff his ass in a locker.
They wouldn't put Marcus Smart on Shaq because they know it wouldn't do no good. Because Shaq was when Shaq was going, he was in shape.
He was in shape, yeah.
Like all those guys on the NBA, on the TNT, they laugh at Barkley. Barkley, all those guys, they know who Embiid is. Yeah. You don't think Shaq knows who Embiid is? You don't think Shaq laughs at these idiots on Twitter that says Embiid's the greatest player of all time at center? Shaq would fucking kick his ass.
Yeah. He would stuff him in the locker. Somebody was telling me.
Now, is he the greatest talent? Great.
Hell of a talent.
Call him the greatest talent.
Hell of a talent.
You call him, I'm not going to argue that. But, all I know is great players are in great shape.
Yeah, and Shaq, in his day, he would get up and down the court like he was a damn greyhound. Like he was like, if you're not familiar with Shaquille O'Neal, I'm sure a lot of our listeners are since they listen to the podcast here. But if we have any younger audience that is out there listening and didn't watch Shaq in his prime, my God. That is like one of the most ridiculous players that you've ever seen there. And the fact that you can put Marcus Smart and Joel Embiid and make them work, it seems ridiculous. But that's the reality. That's the reality of the situation. Before we get out of here, Michael, I want to spend a few minutes here on the rookie mini camps that we had going on this past weekend. There's a YouTube video up there on the compilation of all the rookie mini camps. It's about 30 minutes, man. People are excited for the NFL, man. It makes it a lot of fun for us doing this podcast. And I think for the fans at home, because we all think, rookie mini camps, they're implementing the playbook, they're doing this, they're making evaluations. What exactly goes on there, and what is the purpose of rookie mini camp, and what do teams get out of it?
Well, first of all, the purpose of rookie mini camp is to fucking remind the players that what it's going to take to play in the NFL. And most of the rookies are completely out of shape. Most of them can't get through the practice. Most of them have been drinking the Kool-Aid. You're the greatest, go here, go there, go everywhere, right? Like, nobody comes in great shape. Like, it's going to take 6 weeks to get them in shape. So, and it's going to take 6 weeks to educate them on what it takes. Part of rookie camp is de-recruiting the players, putting them back in and saying, okay, fellas, you're now a professional athlete. Like, this is hard. Every practice is hard. Every play is hard. So, all this guy's making one-handed catch and doing all that, that's great for Twitter. But in terms of building your team, when you bring the rookies in, you've got to have a plan on educating them, on conditioning, strength, get them in the weight room, make them understand what it takes to work. You're a professional athlete. You get here early. You stay late. Your conditioning is most important. I mean, that's all the things is, all the hype train about a guy making a catch. We haven't played any games. And and if you just have a rookie minicamp, there's not enough guys out there to even have a team activity. And everything's so basic, the game's moving so slow, it's really hard to evaluate.
Can you evaluate, because I'm always fascinated by this, like when do you know if you've hit on a draft pick? Like, is it when the game starts, or can you tell right away at a rookie minicamp if a guy's like, oh my God, we might have missed on that, or oh my God, wow, we got a steal in the fourth round. This guy can really play. Like, does any of that go on at rookie minicamp?
I think you kind of have a sense of, you want to be able to say the guy's the guy we thought he was athletically. That's the only thing you can determine.
Okay.
And then you've got to be able to say, look, he's out of shape, but if we get him in shape, he can be really good. Because most people that are in the league know these rookies aren't in shape.
Yeah.
They're not in shape. They're not in the shape they need to be in to be able to play. So the first thing you want to do is say, okay, we got to get him in shape. We got to get them 6 weeks into the training program. We got to spend time getting them to where we can correctly evaluate them. But once you see them, you're really kind of evaluate, did we hit on this guy's athletically? Does he have the right, is the speed, did we hit that right? Does he play with his pads? Now, they're not pads on, but with his cleats on, does he play with the same speed? And then really what the most important thing you learn about rookies is, how serious are they? How important is this to you? Does this really mean something to you? Are you willing to push all your chips to the middle of the table, go all in? How bad do you want this? Yeah. Right? It goes back to that story about Jerry Seinfeld and about the Glenn Miller Orchestra, where they land in the cornfield and the guys grab their interest in, they slush through the snow and they peer into this window and they see these people living this incredibly normal life and having supper and, in a nice fireplace. And one guy looks at the other guy and says, how do people live like that? Well, that's the mentality you need to be a pro athlete. You have to block everything else out. You got to go all in. Like, you don't want a normal. You want to have the unnormal life. You want to be somebody who's a gym rat. That's what you're looking for.
Because I think that's a really key point to bring up, because I think for a lot of guys, maybe their goal was just to make it to the NFL. Some of them, their goal was to get to a second contract. Some a goal to be a Pro Bowler. Some to get to the Hall of Fame. A lot of guys, they have different goals just depending on what the makeup of the person is. Not saying that you're a bad person if your goal is to make it to the NFL, but you might not have that same drive as somebody who's like, I want to wear a gold jacket after 20 years or so.
Yeah. Or simply this, I just want to be the best version of me.
Yeah.
Right? And that's Embiid's not even the best version of himself. Like, they say when he was at Kansas, he was a different kid. Like, the way he is now, they don't recognize him. And part of that is Josh Harris. And part of that is Henke. Part of that is not pushing them, not making him have to work. And so now he's entitled. So now he doesn't bite. He doesn't have any bite to him. And you can't make him bite. You can't make him. He's taken the path of least resistance. Once you take the path of least resistance, you get comfortable. Comfort is the killer for rookies. Don't get comfortable. You got to do this every day. Remember, the reason the Navy SEALs don't graduate all 175 candidates is because not all 175 can handle volume. Handling volume is what kills rookies. Can you do this every day? Not when you do it on a clip on Twitter.
Yeah. And I think for a lot of the rookies, why they're out of shape is they've all been training for combine, pro days, all that
but
stuff.
Then they stopped. Once they got done their pro day, they stopped. They said, "Okay, I don't need to do it. I'm ready for the draft. I'm great." Everybody tells me I'm great. No. You don't even know how far away you are from great.
It is interesting. I mean, we'll see which rookies pop. I mean, we're already seeing the clips from Bryce Young. Jonathan Taylor says that Anthony Richardson, quote, "It's about to get scary." CJ Stroud is there in Houston. So everyone sounds pretty good right now. So hopefully they all end up becoming good, because if they're all good, that makes the league better. And the league being better is what we all want. But we all know that's not typically how it works.
I hope they all are great. But what I really hope they all do is give themselves a chance to be great. And it takes work.
100%. Well, that does it for this edition of the podcast. Michael, we will talk on Thursday. Thank you to everyone involved. Our producer, Elliot Bowman, with us on the ones and twos per usual. All the listeners and the viewers on the YouTube stream. If you're on the YouTube stream, make sure to leave a comment. I know sometimes we don't give enough love to our YouTube audience there, but we see you guys. Yeah. We love that you guys add to the YouTube feed and all that stuff. That's always a plus for us here. And obviously, if you're on the podcast stream, make sure you're subscribing, you're rating, you're reviewing. We appreciate all the support here as we're now throughout this offseason. Mini camp is just about a month away or so. It's going to start getting real. We're going to start getting OTAs are on the horizon. This is when the fun starts to begin here. So make sure you have fun with us along this offseason. Michael, I will talk to you on Thursday, and I'll see you then, buddy.
All right, buddy. Talk to you.